Hey there, H. Jane Harrington with Calamity Stampede. I have something really different for you today. I'm not going to be stamping. I'm actually going to be showing you some really cool ideas if you have children. So my kids are teens now, and my son will be graduating soon, but when they were little, we didn't have cell phones and things to keep them occupied. And quite honestly, they're on their cell phones now all the time. They're not stamping with me as much as they used to. And I'm trying to get kids more interested in stamping and crafting because, of course, studies show that kids that are into arts and music and so on do better on test scores for math and whatnot. And, you can look those studies up, I'm sure. But kids today, they're on their cell phones, and they're just not getting as hands-on, and of course they're not getting it in school as much. So here's an easy way you can get your kids more active and start them young. If you start kids young in the creative world, they're going to probably keep their artistic energy and, their imagination longer, and maybe carry it into adulthood. So I'm going to show you these here in a second, but first I'm going to show you, this is a throwback. Way back, about 15 years ago or so, I was in Stampin' Up. I was a demonstrator back then as well, and this was a case that Stampin' Up sold. It was a two-sided case. And I used this. I love these. I wish they still had these for sale, because I used this for my children. This was our to-go box. We would keep it at the door, always stocked. And anytime we had to go to the doctor or the dentist or out to eat, we would grab this, and this would keep them occupied for hours because, of course, we didn't have phones and things. So in the one side, these are the standard things I used to have. I had this little tiny paper trimmer that actually fit in there. I would keep my snail adhesive in here for them because it's not glue, it's not messy. So when you have, an elementary age kid, you don't want to make a mess on the table at the restaurant. This is a great way to keep them from making a mess. I would also keep a sponge or two in there because they like to do the sponge technique. And I would have a pair of scissors, of course not this pair of scissors because this is very sharp. You don't want this with preschoolers, but this was for demo purposes. So I would also carry some ink pads. Now this is one of the old ink pads, throwback. If you were in Stampin' Up 15 or so years ago, you remember this is what our ink pads looked like, just like what you get in the craft store. And I'd throw a few Stampin' Spots in there. My kids actually had the original Stampin' Up Kids pads. They used to make them for kids, but they don't anymore, sadly. I'd throw a few of my Stampin' Right markers in there. So anything that your kids are into, if they're into crayons or whatever, you can make this kid-friendly and make it what your kids are into and what products that you have at the house. On the other side, I would throw in a stamp set or two. Now, when they were really little, still learning their alphabet, I would usually throw in the alphabet sets to help them practice their letters and numbers. This was just a curly fun one that's old and retired, but I threw it in for demo purposes. And these were some of their favorite stamp sets. Fishy Friends was an old retired set. This was from 2003. And this, of course, is a classic from 2002. So these were just a few because, they would like to make their own little panoramas, kind of like, almost like color forms, but, they're stamped images that they can color. So I'd just throw in whatever sets they were interested in at the time. And then underneath I would have, of course, plenty of white paper and some different color of cardstock. I usually threw in copy paper, but if they had to make a thank you card, say for one of their grandparents, I would throw in my good cardstock and I would help them make a card while we were sitting in the restaurant or whatnot. So that was a really fun activity, and it was educational, especially when I would have the letters in there when they were still learning them. And what we would do often is, at a restaurant, I would let them stamp their own placemats. Because sometimes the restaurants have the placemats already there, and they would just stamp their own scenes, color, you know, it was really fun. Now here's a more modern case. I just got this at a local craft store a few weeks ago, and I'm trying to do this one-handed, not easy. So, whoops, and everything's falling out of me. So this is a more modern idea, since Stampin' Up! Doesn't have those cases anymore. But I threw in here Foxy Friends, and this is a current set, and I think this is very kid-friendly. They can stamp their own little forest scene if they love animals, and they can make those animals just about anything they want. They can be foxes, raccoons, and so on. So I love that set. And here's my paper pierce mat that I have in there for, you know, just to give them a better stamped image, especially when you're using photopolymer stamps. It really works. In here, I just threw some cardstock of different colors and some white paper. And then I've got over in these, I've got, you know, a little punch if they were going to make something specific. And there's that adhesive again. And a blacking pad. There's a... Don't forget, I have forgotten, I've brought my paper pumpkin with me, and I've forgotten to throw in my acrylic block. Don't forget that, because then you get out there and it's like, oh, what do I stamp with? And, you know, there's some, these are modern stamp pads, which are 100 million times awesomer than the old ones. I love these things because they're foam pads. And there's the back again. The Aqua Painter is great if they have paint with water books. These are awesome on the paint with water books because you don't have to have water separate with a paintbrush. The water's encased in these, so we sell those in the catalog as well. And there's just a few Stampin' Right markers and so on. So next, that's just, you know, a more modern idea if you wanted to do that. Next, I'm going to show you a couple of really quick ideas for children. So these, believe it or not, all came from the Dollar Tree. This is again an old retired set from last year. But I took a dollar store journal, okay? This was just from the Dollar Tree. It cost $1. And I took this stamp set, and I stamped in every corner of this journal. And so this is kind of a coloring journal. So every day when you write in it, you might color the picture. This would be great for middle schoolers. I think middle schoolers would really go for something like this, that especially ones that like art and like to color, because they can color the image in and then write their thoughts for the day. Or it could be a school journal if they are keeping track of what they do during the day at school, or if they're homeschooled, you know, they can keep their assignments for the day and their list of chores or so on. So that was just a really quick little thing that I customized with my stamp set. I'll go to this one next. Here's another just little journal. This is a very old stamp set called God Bless America, I think. And I just covered the cover with a piece of Night of Navy cardstock, and I just, you know, scored it at the edges. I just measured it out, and then I adhered it on. So that's just another idea. This is I've got a parakeet up there who's trying to give his 2 cents in. Hey, you, hush. Okay, so this is a calendar from the Dollar Tree. And again, I just customized it with stamp sets that I had at the time. So these make really good gifts, actually. Kids, if they need to carry this to school, or they can give it to Grandma. It's a good Christmas stocking stuffer for Grandma. They can stamp up their own cover for it. Okay, this one is my favorite. Again, this used the Foxy Friends stamp set. And again, another Dollar Tree journal. And I really liked the cover of this journal because it kind of looks faux leather. Well, it is faux leather. It kind of looks like leather, I should say. And I just stamped a little Foxy Friends image on the front. And again, you can... Oh my goodness, my chirpy parakeet. So you can stamp the images however you like, and you know, I pop them up with dimensionals. Of course you don't have to do that, but you can make it however you want. And it's just another one of those blank journals from the Dollar Tree. And I stamped this belongs to from the Make a Difference stamp set, which, let me grab that if I can. Here it is. I've got that right here. This is the Make a Difference stamp set, and I love it because you can write in cursive, you can stamp in cursive. And it also has these little letters here. And if you stamp those, you can actually use a 1/4-inch hole punch and punch those out. I made this last night. As you can see, there's an example that I punched out the word paint. I just stamped these in different color cardstock. I just used scraps, and I used a 1/4-inch hole punch to punch those out. And then the rainbow I actually stamped. So this is a good idea to do with your children if they have artwork. I I was playing with my Brusho crystal color last night, and I tried a drip painting. I've never done a drip painting before, but I keep seeing them on the internet. So I did a drip painting. Can you please hush? Sora, hush! So I did a drip painting, and I decided to put it in a frame for my teen's room. And so again, this is a Dollar Tree frame. And I just grabbed some glitter cardstock, did it up, and I put the ribbon here, but I did a bow, and I actually glued that onto the outside of the frame. So there again, if your children have nice artwork, then this is a really good way to display them. And the last thing I'm going to show you is, if you've ever, I'm sure you remember these things. Do you remember the scratch-off things, the rainbow paper? I'll show you that in a minute. You can buy squares of these on Amazon. So I bought some squares, and this is this project I actually did in an earlier video. You can search for that on my Calamity Stampede channel. So I stamped these stamp sets in white craft ink, and you let them dry, and then you can throw these into one of your to-go kits, and then bring a stylus or a piece of little wood or something. You can even use, let's see, here I have it here, my pick your tool. This has here it is, a paper piercer on it. If you go from the side, you can scratch it off. But you want to make sure that you give the child something that they're not going to hurt themselves. So I wouldn't give them this tool unless they're a little older. But a little wood stylus or something would work fine. And they can scratch off the image, and then it gives you a rainbow underneath. So these all I stamped in white craft ink and let it dry. See? And then these are ones that I stamped that one, but I went ahead and scraped around the edges just to give it an outline. So here's one you can stamp letters, and then you can let the child scratch the letters off and then draw a picture as they're reading. If they're learning how to read, if they're preschool, they can read the word and then have them draw the picture with the little stylus right down here of what that picture says. So that's a really fun project if they're learning to read. This is what I did for grown-ups. This was from the coffee set. And then, there's Foxy Friends again. And here's a math one. So I stamped the problem from a workbook, and then you let them write out or draw out the little manipulatives and then figure out the answer. So there again, you can make these ahead of time, throw them into your to-go kit and let them do that too. So there's some really fun ideas for children, especially on the go. So if you want them to put that phone down, have them get stamping and crafting, and maybe you can make some stampers and paper crafters out of those kids. So we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye now.